While sitting and watching Jeopardy one evening, while his wife is out buying some ice cream, Howard Milta hears scratching sounds in their bathroom. He suspects that means there might be a mouse, or worse, a rat, skittering around in their bathtub. Knowing that it is in the best interest of all parties that the intruding rodent be dispatched and disposed of before Howard's wife, Violet, returns from the corner deli with their ice cream, Howard grabs a broom and a dustpan and ventures into the bathroom to perform his manly duty. Duty. But there's nothing in the bathtub. What Howard finds instead is a human finger popping up out of the drain in the sink. A finger that is moving and exploring its immediate surroundings. For now. The Moving Finger was first published in the December 1990 issue of the magazine of fantasy and science fiction, and was reprinted in the anthology Nightmares and Dreamscapes, which is where I first read it some 33 or so years ago. And I still have that very same edition sitting on the books I have read section of my collection. And yes, I do segregate my collection between books that I have read and books that I have yet to read. I found The Moving Finger to be one of the more visually and memorable stories of that particular anthology, and was delighted when returning to it for this review that my memory of it was pretty damn accurate. No doubt thanks in very large part to Stephen King's innate ability to ground the weird aspects within a tactile reality that feels and reads as both relatable and lived in. King also holds back on determining whether or not the finger actually exists, or if Howard is having some kind of hallucinatory mental break with reality. While the ending does offer a definitive answer, it also leaves whatever happens next up to the reader's imagination. He also refuses to give any and all explanation as to what the finger belongs or is connected to. The most disappointing and discomforting discovery during my revisit was having to suffer through some questionable racial stereotyping. While some of it is addressed within the text, with Howard noting his wife's not-so-subtle racist thoughts about the Vietnamese owners of the corner deli, she feels they are sneaky. Yet King himself writes said owners' dialogue in such heavily accented, pigged-in prose that it reads as over-the-top and insensitive caricature. Your mileage might vary in that regard, though, but I winced when I stumbled over that when revisiting this particular yarn. Even though I do think that the story's central concept and overall approach held up, I also thought the story could have used a tad bit of trimming and tightening. King oftentimes can wander off into the weeds of digressive observations while spinning a yarn, telling a brief anecdote about a magnet on a fridge or a song on a radio, which can and often does undercut the suspense or narrative drive of the primary story he is telling. While there are no kitchen magnets or songs on the radio in The Moving Finger, there is a palpable sense of slowness to it. Reading it, I kept wondering why this story needed to be 40 pages long, but I have no idea as to what could have been trimmed to make it a tad more fast-paced and snappy. The Moving Finger may not be top-tier King, but it is memorable King, and the whole concept and how Howard reacted to it still grabbed and held my attention and kept me wondering, was that finger really there or not? An adaptation of The Moving Finger served as the final episode of Laurel's anthology show Monsters, which was their Outer Limits-styled follow-up to their more Twilight Zone-styled anthology series, Tales from the Dark Side. As was the case with Tales from the Dark Side, Monsters' budget was bottom-of-the-barrel low, and the quality of the episodes could and did vary from pretty damn good to, yikes, that was terrible, which is par for the course for any TV anthology series, or any TV series, period. Monsters aired in the San Francisco Bay Area on Channel 20, which was the home of KOFY, Coffee, a small, local UHF broadcast outfit owned and operated at that time by James Gabbert. It had a Saturday night time slot, airing around reruns of Tales from the Dark Side, reruns of the original Twilight Zone, new episodes of Freddy's Nightmares, a Nightmare on Elm Street series, and the reruns of the original Outer Limits. So, in other words, Coffee's Saturday night programming was awesome! But this leads to an interesting point of trivia here. Both Monsters and Tales from the Dark Side were produced for the syndicated television market without any obligation to air the episodes in a fixed time slot, or, and this is important, in any kind of order. So, the order and dates of the episodes broadcast as listed on the IMDb do not align with if at all, the episodes as broadcasted by Coffee. Also, while the IMDb does give an April 26, 1991 air date for The Moving Finger, I checked a good or 2 years of TV listings and could not find a single one for The Moving Finger, while just about every other episode of Monsters' third and final season seemed to have been broadcast and rerun. Weird. So I would not see The Moving Finger until I nabbed a bootleg DVD of the complete series at, I believe, a WonderCon in 2005 or 2006, maybe even 2007. And when I did watch it, from the very outset, I knew I was in trouble, as the episode's Calliope-style electronic score playing over the opening credits screams, "Comedy episode!" And I have found almost every single comedic episode of either Tales from the Dark Side or Monsters to be rather painfully unfunny. Most times. There are exceptions, of course, but very, very few. The King's Story was adapted by Haskell Barkin, a television writer that toiled, for the most part, writing episodes of 70s-era Saturday morning cartoon shows, such stuff as Clue Club, Jabberjaw, and The Scooby-Doo Show, which I think is where the abomination known as Scrappy-Doo was birthed. He also wrote some scripts for The Love Boat. The Moving Finger was the third of 3 scripts he wrote for Monsters, the other 2 being an episode titled Refugee and another titled The Hole. He wrote 4 scripts for Tales from the Dark Side: Painkiller, and an adaptation of Harlan Ellison's short story Jin, No Chaser, as well as All a Clone by the Telephone and The Impressionist. He also wrote 2 segments for the 1985 Night Gallery-styled relaunch of The Twilight Zone. Those segments were titled Act Break and Tooth and Consequences. And he also wrote a episode of the direct-to-syndication filler for the Twilight Zone relaunch called The Curious Case of Edgar Witherspoon, which is a personal favorite of mine. The episode was directed by Kenny Myers, who is one, and it is only one of 2 directing credits for him, the other being another 3rd season episode of Monsters titled Bug House. But Myers is best known for his special makeup effects work in films ranging from Return of the Living Dead, both parts 1 and 2, to Star Trek 5 and 6, Home Alone 2, and many, many more. The man has a very long and prestigious career in special makeup effects. The episode opens just like the story, with Howard, who is played by the late, great Tom Noonan, and his wife Violet, who is played by the late, great Alice Payton, sitting and watching a Jeopardy-style quiz show. While in the short story it was actually Jeopardy, I think securing the rights to use actual audio clips from the show might have cost more than the episode itself did. I did think I recognized the voice of the unseen game show host, and I did. Turned out it belonged to character actor Richard B. Schull. Someone I know best for his appearance in the Snake Schlocker, wherein Dirk Benedict gets turned into a snake by Strother Martin. and a short-lived sitcom titled Holmes and Yo-Yo, which also starred Richard Shuck. Or no, John Shuck, sorry, and lasted all of 13 episodes. Violet decides to go get some ice cream, and after crumpling the beer can he has just finished off, Howard begins hearing scratching sounds in the bathroom. He investigates and discovers that titular moving finger poking up out of the sink basin drain. Now, on the plus side of the adaptation equation, the moving finger is almost word for word King's story. Even with everything that takes place outside of the apartment cut in its entirety, and Howard's struggle over whether or not he is hallucinating the finger, and his final bloody battle with that finger whittled down to its very cost-effective bone, the episode manages to retain the shape and content of King's yarn with zero liberties taken, which is quite the impressive feat. But there is also a downside. As I said, the cartoonist music that opens and underplays the entire episode works against it sometimes. There are scenes that might have played better if played straight, with the comedic aspects growing out organically. But as it is, most of these scenes are undercut by the goofy sound of music. While Tom Noonan does give a solid and energetic performance throughout, it is also a very uneven one. It almost looks and feels as if he were given contradictory directions between takes. Act serious here. No, act goofy. No, act serious here. No, act goofy. We're going to fix it in the edit. They didn't fix it in the edit. Even with the whittling of the story down to its very core elements, it struggles to fit in the show's half-hour format, and which means there is no room for Howard's confrontations with the finger to really breathe. And the final battle with the hedge trimmer has a few shots that are so clumsily set up and they look incompetent. There's a lot of great shots in this, but that one moment was just like, ouch. The time and budget constraints really show there. Also, I really need to point out that you do not get a fistful of drain cleaner spray and walk away from it unscathed. That really needed to go, because any and all disbelief will be, since suspension of disbelief will be shattered by that. And then there's the ending, which goes ever so slightly past that of the source story, if by only a few seconds, and, well, unfortunately stumbles badly in its delivery due to a very poor choice of a practical effect, coupled with a clumsy rewrite of Howard's closing observations. So, despite the obvious hard work of all involved, the moving finger ends up on ended monsters with more of a constricted whimper than with an enthusiastic bang. And while it falls short of qualifying for the series' worst episode, it does sit well within the below average section. So it goes.